Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Sanka-Smith. And we got Candy in the house, and Kendrick is on the board there. Couple of things to talk about, to mull over. By the way, our guest this afternoon is going to be Carol Lashley. She's, from ADR, what do you call that, conflict resolution, and what do you call it, mediation, and they do arbitration. And it's really to talk about youth violence and how kids are dealing with this. Because it's not just, we always think of this conflict violence as a situation or these arbitrations with divorces and adult situations. But the reality is these kids, they're having problems. They're having problems dealing with it, at that age, So, I mean, think about it. T.A. Thompson is a junior high school. And I had a mother come up to me, Rogan Smith, to show you how things go. And I'm not calling her name, so I'm sure she's not going to have a problem with it. But I was at work, and she comes up and she says, "Listen, I know it's your work time, but I need to ask you a question." She says, because, I listen on the radio. Thank you for listening. I said, "I have a situation. My kid was expelled from school, and she's having problems getting audiences with various officials to try to resolve it, right? But I said, "Well, so what happened?" And she said, "Well, what happened was he was on a bus, and something was going down, and apparently a teacher must have slapped him or hit him, or something happened, and he turned around and he body slammed the teacher."
Whoa.
So I said, let me be completely honest with you. I said, I say this to everyone. I said, if you watch football, I say, "You watch football?" She said, "No." I said, "You watch soccer?" She says, "Yes." I said, "Okay, the yellow card?" I said, "Well, the referee only ends up giving that yellow card to the person who retaliates, because they didn't see the first move. If that teacher had hit your son, what he should have done was to report it and deal with it that way, because now the reality is he did something, and that's all anyone may have seen. It's his word against, So, I mean, I tried to put on to some people. But that's again how we deal with things, right? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a fight. I can't fight. If someone hit me, my first inclination is not to hit back. It's not my first inclination.
If someone puts their hand on me, then
Yeah, because you know why? I'm not capable of certain things, and so it's easier for me to try to deal with that person in a legal framework. Because another thing I learned, because I've had that. By the way, gone through that. I told you this when I was in high school. Someone hit me, and I thought that I'd kill them.
Because you attacked
I did
them?
Retaliate.
Oh, you
I did. Yeah. That's why I don't do it now. I thought at that point I got onto that person and I went crazy on them, and I decided I am not. See, he wasn't going to go to jail. He was going to be if he was dead. He ain't going. Yeah. Nothing happened to him. Okay, so now, but I'm in jail for his actions, as opposed to what he didn't kill me. But it angered me, but I could have dealt with that in a different way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and we could always say what should happen after the fact. If the teacher did in fact hit this child, then the teacher should be held accountable, because at the end of the day, yes, there is definitely a line that is crossed when the teacher. I'm not a fan of teachers or principals spanking or hitting kids in school. Leave that to the parent to deal with, because if you do something to that child and that child drops dead or something, you ain't gonna be dealing with no court of law if you kill my child.
I mean, the lesson, of course, is no violence should be happening. Period.
Right.
But the question, I've been since that day, because I think I have a personality that goes off. It may take me a little while, right, to get to that level of physical retaliation.
Right.
But when I get to that point of physical retaliation, it's kind of like no coming back, okay? And having done that once, I realized that's not the way to go. And so another time I was in a bar, I'll never forget, and it was a little racial thing, and this guy tapped me on the shoulder. And he says to me, say again? This was abroad, yes. And he says to me, so you think you belong in here? So first of all, aside from the fact that the guy was about 2 times bigger than Ken, okay, I wasn't fooling with that.
He was how many times?
About 2 times bigger than Ken. Okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I wasn't fooling with that. So I just turned around. I said to him, yeah, man.
You're not a small person.
I said, yeah, man, I'm just having a drink. You know, and I turned around. I feel the tap again. So I said to myself, this isn't good. He gonna have to take me from behind. Okay?
Never
And
turn
sure
your
enough,
back.
this guy gets up next to me. He was a town drunk, Lance, and he started to try to defend me. He ain't touched the fella nothing.
Yeah.
He just get, that kind of little thing. Your boy rear back like in the movies.
And hit the guy.
Out. Broke his nose, flat. He was looking for someone to hit.
That was for you though.
But he was looking for someone to hit. He
Yeah.
had a bad day.
Yeah,
I don't know,
that
farm,
was for you.
the bale, the hay wasn't baling good or something. But he come in there mad.
He just wanted a target.
Yeah. And I was very, okay, I see my target. It's
So
a
after you
Negro.
saw that, you were like,
Oh, and he walked out.
oh yeah?
The guy walked out. In fact, the only thing it really did, there's always benefits to things. When it happened, the bar owner, who I knew, actually used to come down to the bar almost quite a bit, he never let me buy a drink again for like 6 months. So that was a little consolation. But the point is, people are looking to, to get into these fisticuffs, and you can avoid it.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about if I see someone just trying to get in drama with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly I can walk away, and I would advise
But you know,
anybody
some
to.
people, if you tap them.
I'm talking about. Yeah, you don't put your hand on my person.
See, you tap them. Next thing you know, you stand over them with like a smoking gun.
When you tap me and you say you think you belong here, that's a totally different thing from just you tapping me on the shoulder.
But then he tapped me again.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It's a
What you
completely different.
you see, well, let me just say something before you say anything, because you have a hard mouth. If you turn around and you'd see Jolly Green Giant, you was going to be doing that. Yeah,
I don't care. I don't
Jolly Green
care.
Giant he lay out Lance. Listen,
The town drunk.
listen. You ever see in the movies when they punch and the fellow just fall on the ground? I never, just in the face, boom.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have
His
even been
fist was as big as Cat Head.
in that type of place anyway.
A bar.
Because that ain't my. Well, first of all, I don't drink.
I've been there. Well, that's good,
That's
but
number one.
I'd gone there for 4 years of my life, never a problem. Okay, never an issue. But this guy, he came in as a stranger. He want to top up.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that old
Yeah,
video.
see, See, people do that kind of stuff, man.
I remember.
What does he do?
That's from 2016, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how people have that kind of
Can't
thing.
even stand up.
No.
What's the cashier?
You see.
The cashier?
You see.
He-
So we're
he
watching
showed me
some
something,
surveillance
yeah.
footage right now of this
Yeah.
person attacking. I mean, this guy's on the ground. Come on.
No, but
Look at. Oh. What
this
happened
guy
here?
who was
What are you
The
shaking?
cashier shake. The cashier's for helping him out.
Yeah,
for helping out.
Push. Okay.
Yeah, but you see, I'm just saying, I don't even listen. I watch, by the way, and this is off the subject. I watch a lot of what you call your GOT. You know GOT?
yes,
What?
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Ah.
You just watch that?
No.
Watch
I have
that.
no desire to
Watch that. No,
'Cause
they on 20.
Everybody who
Listen to
watches
me.
Game
I don't
of
watch
Thrones.
Game of
Always
Thrones.
talk about-
I never used to. I used to
Game of
watch it a
Thrones.
little bit, but recently they got like a 24/7 going on.
Right. Because
And I watch it at 20
This is on HBO, right?
HBO, and I watch it in 20.
I have
It is
HBO.
I watch it in 24/7. I watch it each episode about at least 4 or 5 times.
Each episode, huh?
At least. Because
Because it has nudity in it. and
No,
all
no,
that.
no, no. They
That's
have.
why.
It's much deeper
But
than
it
that.
does have nudity, though.
I did, but that isn't the reason. They into some serious,
No.
serious,
You like that again, yeah.
weird torture type stuff.
You watch
I
that?
started to watch the, leading up to the new, the final season, and I
Yeah.
wanted to watch, but I didn't get very far.
I've watched
I didn't get
almost
past.
right to the final thing.
Yeah.
They got some whew.
No man, that's some
It's-
crazy
Listen,
stuff.
you know what kills
Graphic,
me
yeah.
when I watch that, and I don't know. Can you watch it? Okay.
Kendrick,
You know what kills me about the GOT? Every waking day at that moment is plotting.
Because what else I gotta do?
I say, you know
But
what? If
plot.
they could just put some VCRs in there,
That's the
they'll save a
problem.
lot of problems, you know. Some DVD. Okay. They just all day, all night plotting.
Yeah.
all day.
And then see, the only thing that gets a little off for me, I can deal with it. I don't like the zombie introduction, but we'll come back on that.
He's so
Slice Rooney.
So gross.
Slice Rooney. Anyway, having said that, listen, happy.
Peppa Pig.
Anyway, I'm on the Game of Thrones thing. The new season, I think, starts on Sunday. The 14th. So
Kendrick
there'll be
knows
no
that.
one on the streets. Everyone will be watching that.
On the 14th.
The 14th.
Yeah,
That's Sunday.
yeah.
That's Sunday.
Man, I tried to catch up, and it just was
Oh,
just
well,
too
you know what you
hard,
should do?
man.
Watch it 24/7 like me on Saturday and
Yeah,
Sunday.
I actually have to do stuff.
Yeah, but it's
Ed,
too bad. The only break I took from God
was to go.
was to go see the movie at the Fuchsia.
So you
Okay.
did.
You got to go see Between, what is it?
Us?
Something Between Enemies.
Oh,
The
no.
Best of Enemies.
You
gotta see that. That's a good movie.
Yeah, you mean when
It's about
Taraji?
What's her name?
Taraji?
She's like a grouchy.
Best of friends, best
Okay,
of enemies.
yeah.
Best of enemies, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good movie. You
And your
should
boy
see it.
From, what is it,
Thornton or
Bill-
something like that.
Billboard,
Thornton or
Billboard,
something
Something
like
like I
that.
don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know the
You got to
movie,
see that.
so-
It's about
Best of
it's
Enemies,
about
yeah.
it's a true story about in school integration. So yeah, that's what I do. But the clock, 24. I can watch that when I reach home.
Because what you said you close to the
Well, I've seen the end, but I just want to, because there are gaps that I want to
right.
fill in.
Oh yeah.
So I fill
know
in the
some
gaps.
people who've had to go back and watch a few seasons, not even a few episodes,
Yeah.
to kind of catch up and refresh.
So what's this all about? Woman admits she kidnapped 7 young boys.
That's scary to me.
So now I don't know the story. I don't want to be the part of salacious rumor mongering,
Yeah.
right? But I
But
heard
not knowing
something,
is what scares
two
me.
women are
I heard
being held.
something about the fact that they said, and I don't know even where this came from, that they were like screening them to see if they were suitable
for
I
to
don't know.
send
to,
over
to send somewhere.
Screening whom?
screening
boys.
the boys
To see if the boys were suitable
Were
to send.
suitable to send off.
send overseas.
Yeah, kidnap and send.
We get into that now. Well, I don't know if that's in
I
fact
don't
the
know.
case.
Yeah,
I don't want
I
to
don't
Anyway.
want to.
Once again, you
'Cause
see your
that
boy
would
at the
put
House of
people in
Bolton.
a serious
Excuse me. You know the
panic.
House of Bolton?
Yeah.
Them, if that's anywhere near true,
turn them upside down.
you need to send them over by
Yeah.
Ramsey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ramsey's peel your skin, you know.
Heal your skin.
Ramsey-
I mean, like the Bahamas used to be one of those places where you'd be like, this stuff never happens.
It happens,
right?
no.
And you're so
Yeah.
proud to
Too
say
much
that.
law and order, man.
Yeah.
Now it's
I mean,
just
and I
another
hope
thing.
I hope they also, if there's anybody
Jail
else.
for life. See, that's jail for
They
life
said
action.
there was an accomplice in Eleuthera or something.
I don't know.
Or
Yeah.
But that's jail for life
you need
action.
to find everybody who is involved in that,
Yeah.
because that is some
And then put them
serious
away.
stuff.
Send them off somewhere.
They-
Send them to your boy,
Who?
Ramsey Bolton.
Oh, Ramsey Bolton.
I don't like that kind
Yeah,
of stuff
say,
at all.
say tried to lure the little boy. Say if you want some sunglasses and stuff. Luckily, the little boy kept a good distance away from the car,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't fall for it. But that is just the weirdest thing. I mean, we teach
Just
our
even
kids
the
don't talk to
method,
strangers.
but even the method, like if you were trying to, like, and I'm not trying to put any ideas, but like, you would think that something like that you would just, like you would grab the child,
These
or
people
like,
weren't committed.
no.
it's
They weren't.
it's
They
you're
weren't.
like luring the child in, or you
'Cause
know,
you don't want to
Be seen.
you don't want to be seen. You wanted to look like the kid
They
knows
weren't.
you
They
and just
weren't.
comes
They
up.
weren't. They don't know. What
I
they're
gotta
doing.
know the
I
motive,
hope we
man.
don't get to that
Yeah,
point where
they
you're
don't know what
snatching
they do. They
people's
don't know what
kids
they
and
do.
stuff.
I gotta know the motive
But
though.
people need to be keeping an
Or
eye
they
on
could
their
just
kids
be what
too,
they
though.
call you twisted. People who just want to do something.
No.
Twisted.
But they need to keep an eye on their children,
Yeah.
though. You know how many times? It's so funny because even before all this stuff started happening, I drive through the inner city all the time, and I always think it's so easy to snatch one of these kids. It's so easy
Because
to
they
snatch them
walk
up.
home, they walk wherever, or from school, you have a lot of children that just are,
Well,
catching the bus
but to Rogan's
walking.
point, we come from a culture where many of us have walked home from school.
Yeah,
Never had
or
to
just
Yeah, or go to the
walking,
shop,
or
you know?
walking
go to
somewhere.
the shop. I used to go to the shop. So there's
Yeah.
not a culture where you have to be concerned about that.
Right.
We're
I'm still
living in
freaked
different
out.
times, though.
I'm still freaked out that people in the States letting their children do that.
Yeah.
That's what's freaky.
We're living in different times now, though. I mean, and even beyond, you're talking about snatching. You have kids who run into the middle of the road as people are driving, and then if you
Yeah.
hit their kid, then it's a problem.
I
Don't
have a
make me
friend who
make
lives up
fun
in Wisconsin, and he went into this store. It's like a Home Depot type store, and one of his kids, young kid, must have wandered off. He said he has never felt
That level of
that
fear.
level of panic. He immediately went to the front of the store and he yelled out, "Lock it down!"
Yeah,
Oh,
He just
Yeah.
freaked out.
yeah.
You
I
know?
had one of those freak out situations.
You locked it down?
No, I
Most
don't think you
stores
could
would.
lock Disney World
Oh,
down.
no. Ooh,
I would have locked it
Disney?
down. Mickey, bring your hip over here. Lock it down.
Boy, when they tell you.
That's why you have that
That was
leash.
an experience.
See, and then they no, but I don't feel like putting my child on no leash.
Okay,
You know
you
why?
know,
Because I don't want to be in a
You
panic
know.
mode.
I don't
You
blame
know.
you. I'm a big fan of that.
Leash it up.
Leash it up. And
Because
keep
as
them
much
nearby.
as, especially your younger kids, like as much as you talk to them about you stay by my side or this, that,
You turn
come
to
on.
go
You
get the
turn
hot dog and they're
around.
gone.
Yeah.
That's,
We had a hot
Now,
dog.
that is a panic mode.
but not
Oh
only
my
that,
God.
something piques their interest and they walk toward, and it's just natural for them to explore
Especially
their
in a place like
curiosity.
Disney World. Now, fortunately for me,
Whew.
my child, Disney World freaked her out.
Right, so
She wasn't going nowhere.
Yeah.
She grabbed onto
She
you.
grabbed
right?
on because those big giant rats.
My niece freaked out too. She was
Yeah.
like 3 or 4.
Mickey's a big giant rat.
She lose herself from the stroller.
She
It's a
said,
mouse.
she said, no, so yeah, from her perspective,
Yeah.
this is the
that age
biggest
too.
rat on the planet.
They don't even look like rats. They look like
Listen,
cute
that's
little
to you.
mouse.
don't.
That's to you,
No,
but
they
you
don't.
decide.
Yeah, you see that
okay?
coming?
Listen, my daughter used to watch Barney on TV. I knew all the songs.
Oh, that's
I
even
love
worse.
you, you love me. The whole
Oh my
thing.
God. I hate
The whole
Barney.
thing. I watch everybody, and in them days it was the VCR.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought, what a wonderful thing to be able to take my child over to see Barney. Barney freaked her right out.
And she loved him on TV.
Barney freaked me out on TV. I mean, I didn't
She
watch
wouldn't go.
Barney,
So basically, anything that's not a person character, she ain't
She
fooling
ain't
with
for
that.
that.
No.
Got to be like a Snow White or a Peter Pan or one of them.
Not Snuffleupagus?
I don't think stuff like that. I wouldn't even talk about Alf in them.
I don't even know what
Alf got enough for Eagles nose. I don't suffer like for
Snuffy
this.
from
Snuffy.
Sesame Street,
Yeah.
Big Bird, best friend.
She
Not
ain't
even
fooling
Big
with
Bird?
that. She ain't fooling with no.
Big Bird was
non-
friendly.
Was Big Bird a boy or a girl?
It doesn't matter.
No,
It's
no,
a
I
bird.
need to know this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did he ever lay an egg? I don't know.
Gender, yeah. Big Bird, don't know.
Listen,
Gender fluid.
she didn't have time to find
Don't
out if
know.
Big Boy was friendly because as soon as she see the giant stork or whatever that was, boom.
Now that you say it, and I
don't
try to
know.
replay the I want to say the voice.
It's like
I don't know what Big Bird
It's
is.
like our man. It's like our
the
man
voice
Pat.
is very neutral too. It could go both ways.
Yeah,
It's like our
right,
man
right.
Pat.
I don't know.
What do you
I
think
think it
Pat
was. I think Big Bird was a boy.
Oh, why am I dressed like that?
I don't really know what Pat is.
You know who Pat is?
Yeah.
From Saturday Night Live?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and every time Pat would like go to the shed or something, it'd be another thing.
Oh.
Boy, it's 2019. I still don't know what Pat was.
But they had a whole movie on Pat. There was a movie on Pat. Yeah,
Yeah, he's always
Yeah,
parlay
you know,
those
Pat,
skits into thing. I don't know what Pat was.
yeah. Well, no, what? That was the whole point.
I know, but
That was the whole
At
point.
least when you could.
Because he'll tell you one thing.
Tell us.
You didn't see Pat with no what you call that? The camel toe or moose knuckle.
Moose knuckle.
That's the female version of the camel toe. We can
That's
say
the
that on the
male-
radio.
that's The male version.
The
you
male
mean.
version, yeah. Can you say that on the radio?
Well,
Yeah, Ken says yes.
What's the male?
Huh?
What's
What?
the male version?
Moose knuckle. You never heard that?
I now that you
have.
say it, yeah. But I mean, I couldn't pull it out, out of my head.
No.
If you asked me to.
Moose knuckles. There's certain mysteries on TV.
That's
That's
just-
one of them.
What's that? The moose knuckle?
No.
Oh.
Whether Pat was a boy or a girl. And then used to watch Martin and Candy and
Martin, yeah.
with Tommy. You don't know what
Yeah,
Tommy's
Tommy had a job.
What his job was.
Oh, may he rest
I
in
must
peace.
say, you know Martin Short?
Yeah.
He did the guy with he would love
Yes.
Pat Sajak.
Yes. Oh goodness.
I love Wheel.
These little mysteries.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
listen, what else is going on in the land of the Bahamas?
Oh, the Bahamas.
Well, you see, Rupert Roberts is saying he doesn't care if WTO ends up being the greatest thing for the Bahamas. He's still not supporting it.
You know what I like about my friend Rupert? Let me just say this because he
I
batting
said, really,
0 for 2 now.
Robert?
Let me tell you why I say
We
that.
started this with VAT. With the
No,
VAT.
no, it started with the roads.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, and
Oh,
every
you know
time,
what? You're right.
every time my friend Rupert says I don't like that. One thing about him, I gotta shake his hand. He come back and say, that's a really good thing,
It worked out.
So WTO is probably gonna work out really good.
I know.
So,
Anything you oppose is
So if he's
really well.
opposed, that's a good indication.
So anyone who had any doubts about WTO,
There you go.
Rupert is
You
endorsed
got-
100% in the future.
my gosh.
Lord.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is, what's interesting, and I'll tell you something that's behind that, but in terms of consumer goods and sales, WTO is actually very positive because it brings the cost of goods down. Okay? For instance, prohibitive duties. Now, there's a little thing. We had Chihuahua. We had Wago on.
Yes.
I enjoyed that show.
And Wago was about the chicken.
He broke some stuff
remember
down,
the chicken?
boy.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
You talk about the chicken.
Yeah, I listened.
You listen to the chicken?
Yes.
I heard, yes.
He broke that chicken down to the bone marrow.
You know. So we had what you had. What they had? I forget now. The modes. And we had the modes.
Different modes?
We had different modes of. Oh no, we got to bring him back. You remember he had like different. He did the 4 things.
The 4 things. The third one was the.
That was the hard one. That's the manufacturing. Yeah. But the chicken was good because he said how chicken you got to keep that chicken. You got to watch that chicken cost because the people make a lot of money on chicken.
Yeah.
You make a whole lot of money on chicken because we eat that chicken.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I see a justice toured 13 sections of Fox Hill Prison to see what the conditions were like.
Judge.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be a little
Justice
bit more
Gerald Grant
lenient on
Thompson.
nonviolent crimes.
Buddy, you think they bleached that place down before she got?
I hope not.
You wanted the full rank.
Well, if you bleach it down, they're hiding something.
That's what I'm saying.
You know. But
You wanted the
I hope
full,
they. But
full,
listen,
full rankness
even with
there?
the rankness, I think you can see the inhumane conditions when you got 5 dudes up in a cell made for 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. You know that's.
And a slop bucket.
So you say, okay, if you got a guy who's smoked a joint or sold I guess they don't have DVDs anymore, a TV or whatever, why put a non-violent person into a scenario that is conducive to, nurturing a violent person? Because that person's got to protect themselves. They got to fend for themselves.
Yeah. I had a conversation about this the other day. You ever watched it's on Netflix, Shot Caller?
No, I've not watched Shot Caller.
So just briefly, right? You have this corporate guy, family guy, married, 2 children, blah blah blah. One night he's in a kind of car accident and he gets charged because somebody died. And he gets charged and he gets sentenced, right? And so then now he's sent to jail and he is literally he turns into a gangster.
Yeah, because he got to survive.
Because he's got to survive. So here it is. You've sent somebody to jail for a crime.
For an accident.
And you've sent them to be amongst real, hardcore criminal killers.
Yeah.
And so the conversation came up, I'm like, if you have different degrees of crimes and different, consequences for the crimes, why wouldn't you have different tiers or different places to send?
Because that's all we got.
You just send them all into
but
one
that's a
facility, and it's wrong. I think it's wrong. If you're thinking
I don't
about
think you should be
rehabilitation,
taking someone who is in a first of all, let's say it was a car accident. Now I don't know if he was drunk or not. I can't say because there should be a penalty for that.
Well, that's why he was charged
right.
too, right?
But that has more validity to go to jail than these people who are doing non-violent crimes.
Right.
It's not. No one died when you get high, or when you took the person's. What did they steal at your house?
A lawnmower.
A lawnmower. Maybe they're going to go cut lawn. I don't know. But the point is, it's not a violent crime. You cannot take that person. You know what? What we should be doing is taking that money and really studying and examining why that person took that lawnmower. Mm-hmm. And how we could correct him from not having to take the lawnmower. Like, why did you take it? Well, I was trying to find it. You might find a guy, and I don't know if judges do this, right? Let's say you take a guy like Ken. Now, obviously, Ken ain't no thug. So he, for some reason, his family is having issues. So he decides now, I've got to steal this car because I got to make some money. Okay? So no one's harmed. They get the car back.
That's if they get the car back.
Yeah, but they have insurance. Now take
Or they may not.
Oh, they may not. But still, well, then make Ken pay for the car back. But why examine why he took that car. And if you're a regular human being, a judge, you're going to know, you know what? This person isn't a criminal. This
Some
person
people are
lost.
just thief, man.
Yeah, but I know, I understand that. But I'm saying, why not just deal with it that way? Why deal with it in one cold formula as opposed to saying, yeah, that guy, he's a problem. We got to deal with something. But we could see, like, Ken, boy, he was working up until, and then, and Ollie fired him, and now he can't get no job, no way, because he's 59 years old, and things are tough. How do we solve Ken's problem? How do we create a scenario where Ken can pay for that car back, right? And at the same time, how can we get Ken back into society so that a man who was doing the right thing for up to this period of time can get back on that track? No.
Yeah, judges certainly can exercise discretion.
Can they?
I think
Or do they have penalties that they have to?
I think if a judge tells a young man who she sees promising and he made one mistake, she could say, you know what, I'm going to be lenient. I think there is discretion in certain things. I don't think there's discretion. Well, anyway, I can't even say that. But yeah, go ahead, Candy.
No, it was like the 16-year-old girl who was charged as an adult for murder of her kidnapper. You remember that case?
She went to jail?
They sent her to jail. She's now been let out because I guess of the public outcry.
Was she? Give me some racial thing on that. What was she?
I think she was mixed race.
Okay.
And
who did she kill? The kidnapper?
So she was in the process. She was like a sex slave. Like she was.
She had the wrong jury.
Right. So that's what the outrage was about. Here it is. You're charging this young girl as a criminal when really what she did, she murdered somebody, but this was her kidnapper who she was, a sex slave for. She wanted to get away by force.
So that's
she
killed him in the process of getting away?
Of trying to get away.
You mean not like come back 3 years later and kill him?
No.
You sure?
I don't think that's the case. No.
I can look that up.
No, she did not come back 3 years later.
She did in the process. We know her name. We know some details. The research
y'all
you can
keep
check
talking. Let me look it up.
Because that is, I would not in any way, fashion, shape, or form be convicted her. I was on a case once. I told you the case. I was on a case once, and in Nassau, and a gentleman was brought before the courts. He had shot dead someone who had come into his home at night through a bathroom window. The person escaped, and he was shot on the boundary line of his property. The judge didn't even waste time with that one, man. Judge said, no, this ain't going to wake up. This is dismissed. This is dismissed. Because, you Ken, you on that jury, what you doing? So Saul Makosa was in my house?
Yeah.
At night? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap?
Yeah,
that's a wrap?
That's a wrap. I mean, if I sitting in the court and that come before me, because I put myself in that position. I'm immediately putting myself in that position, and this man come in my house.
And I'm going to and I know the judge looked at that jury, and he could see the jury, and he said, oh yeah, they ready to go home.
They ready to
could we vote now?
Be ready to vote. Vote.
So no. Well, we're going to take a break. We got news. Our guest this afternoon is Miss Carol Lashley, who is with ADR. That's Alternative Dispute Resolution. They deal with arbitration, mediation, and all that. She's here. And
we have Candy.
She's affectionately known to me. We also have Candy. And we'll be right back, and we'll talk with Mrs. Lashley and Candy. Hey, Candy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. And, of course, we have Condoleezza Thompson with us. And I think she wishes to continue the conversation on my man, Joe.
What
I'm drawing the line with my man, Joe. Huh?
Oh, yeah. What did y'all discuss?
We had quite a bit of conversation because people on the outside referred to the conversation with me and her because I touched her shoulder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I sat on her shoulder.
You sat on his shoulder?
He came and he sat here. I told him it was not comfortable.
Yeah.
And to watch himself.
Yeah, and I watched myself.
Now I hold his hand here, and he tells me that I'm not allowed to. He feels violated.
No, and in fact, we have a thing now.
I touched his
she
wrist.
Cannot be closer than 6 foot from me.
We didn't do the measurement.
But from now on, can you have a tape, Candy? You have a tape on you, a tape measure?
No.
Okay, from now on, bring a tape measure.
I didn't bring my big bag.
Okay.
What about Candy? She sits close
No, but
to you.
we don't have an issue. You have the issue with me, you see? So I can make sure, because, with the girls, would the women say Nora O'Donnell and all, she have friends who the fellas say they're CEOs of the company. They ain't even going to lunch with no woman no more.
Yeah, I mean, why I brought it up was because I had seen this article, right? And while I agree with the whole Me Too movement, there are some instances where the distinction gets kind of blurry. I think, some of these women's accusations, they're not criminal. Like, they're not.
14 years later, you mean?
No, not even
About
14
the touching
years
on the
later.
head?
It's a comparison between, like,
sexual assault.
Natural human affection.
Him putting his forehead on hers like this is natural human affection.
So hold on. But it also is not coercive, immoral behavior. That is the difference. We have to.
It's a difference.
Okay.
If
there are boundaries. Let's talk about the boundaries. Yes, that's what he is. That is what we need to talk about with him. He's not like this powerful man that is trying to overpower a woman and get her to do things for him or to him in order to get,
Is that all it takes, though? Do I as a woman, or should I as a woman only feel threatened or feel uncomfortable if you are doing these things in order to get something from me, or am I not at liberty to say, at liberty to say, I am so uncomfortable with this man.
No, you are.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Not a problem.
I think boundaries
I'm uncomfortable right now.
Hold on. I think boundaries are important, but we also have to take a step back and sometimes evaluate somebody's intent.
Yeah.
It's not my intent. Like Joe Biden, they joke about
Joe, that's what he does.
How affectionate he is.
It ain't like
people.
he called her the next day and say, "Boy."
Yes, I do agree that there are certain lines that you have crossed, and you just need to know. Listen,
and you're doing this on TV.
Listen, Biden, you can't give Eskimo kisses to somebody who, that's just not,
Who's not an Eskimo?
Right, like they just not down for that. But he's not doing it to say, his intention is not, to me.
I don't know what his intention is, and I think that's where you saying his intention is this.
I said take a step back and find out what the intention is.
I don't care. What is his behavior over the years in public, etc.?
There are certain things. I don't care how affectionate he is. I'm not hold on, let me say this though. You are not my family member. You are not my spouse.
Not a problem.
We're not friends.
I'm agreeing with you.
We work together, or you're my boss, and you should know. I don't care how affectionate you are, especially as corporate America. Okay?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
I agree.
You should know not to put your forehead on mine.
But let's not vilify them and not try to bring them as if they are some kind of.
But listen, here's the good thing.
It's not a vilification.
Here's a good thing about that. This particular incident. Very simple, very clear. There are obviously many scenarios where women are prey to sexual predators. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But one thing that is definitely common between men and women is women touch men unintentionally as much as men may touch women. Agreed. So not a problem. We can start making our moves now because it's ridiculous. So every time a woman say like, "Hey, sweetie, write yourself up on that. You just touched my arm. I'm uncomfortable with that." So let's go down that road.
I just think we have to be
let's go down that road.
That's all. I'm not saying that nobody can't be. And people, women cannot be uncomfortable. I'm not saying that at all.
Because I'm uncomfortable.
Don't twist my words now. All I am saying is, it can very easily, the lines can be blurred to the extent where we're not even thinking about the intent anymore.
No,
it's just
whatever it is. And by the way, Candy, one last thing on that, right? As I said to Rogan last week, and she had a point to raise on it. If you're uncomfortable, like how if a woman touched me, I'll say, you know what? I'd prefer you not to touch me. I'm uncomfortable. Don't come to me 14 years later and tell me about you touched me because I run for president. You touched me and I'm uncomfortable. Come on.
I was supposed to actually tell you this today, Rogan. Hold on.
Because if he was running for president, she wasn't going to say nothing.
Blasey Ford, when your boy was going up for Supreme Court, Christine Blasey Ford. She
was sexually assaulted. She was raped. I'm not talking about.
You're talking about time.
No. I talk in context. Excuse me. No. Let me clarify. Let me clarify. I said that in a scenario like a sexual assault is a completely different thing.
Yes.
But if you feel that a touch that someone it's not sexual, but if you feel uncomfortable with it.
You keep touching, sorry to cut you off, right, but you keep touching your hand. It was more than that. It was him putting his forehead
on
hers.
His waist. He said she put his hand on her waist. Come on, a waist.
That's inappropriate.
Well,
though.
fine, but then just say, you know what? I feel it's inappropriate. But I'm saying, if you allow someone, right, for 14 years to do a behavior that no one says it's inappropriate to, then you know what? Maybe they're not thinking it's inappropriate.
Maybe it was a different time too.
Maybe so.
Maybe so. So she probably knew back then it didn't feel right, but you know what? Everybody around is like, okay, this ain't no big deal. And then years later, it's like, you know what? Hey, you know, I always felt uncomfortable about him doing that.
If I touch you on the waist, would you feel uncomfortable?
If you touch me in a certain way on my waist,
yeah, on a certain. Well,
but you're my friend.
Right.
You're my friend.
But you see, Joe is a politician. He's kissing babies for crying out loud. You think it's inappropriate to kiss babies?
I told this gentleman, right? I said to him, I had a boss cup my face. You see the way I'm doing my hands? A male boss, Candy, cup my face like this and kiss me lips on my cheek.
Yeah, but that's inappropriate.
I felt so like, oh my God, this is disgusting. I hate it.
Yeah.
I recoil.
So I am
listen, I am by no means. I am by no means trying to.
That's not casual contact.
I just want to make very clear, I'm by no means trying to minimize, these women inappropriate behavior. I'm not. Like, for instance, I wanted to tell you this earlier today. I had run into somebody and, shook his hand. And, like, he lingered, like, shaking my hand. And I grabbed my hand back. Right. And I said,
yeah, exactly. You said that.
No, you're not going to hold my hand for as long as you want. And I told him that.
Yeah.
I don't
and you might have actually helped him, assuming it was intentional, not to do it again.
I said, I'm sorry. I would like my hand back.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But I don't know. I don't know what was going on with him. But yes, you're
different. Some women are a little bit more timid in that regards, and I don't think it should be on them to always have to. I think a man should know his place and know not to do that. That's inappropriate.
Because I am very frustrated about that. Hold on. Therefore, because that has to be normally, because we're dealing with casual contact. I'm not dealing with what do you call it? Overt sexual contact.
Right, exactly.
If that is the case, no problem. But don't let's go with this. A man is placed to know. You know why? Because a woman needs to know her place and not touch no man.
She should. And hold on, I was going to get to that point, but Candy started talking. I was going to say to you too, I don't like for women. I get disgusted when I see women doing things to men that wouldn't be appropriate if a man did it to them.
Exactly.
Don't be spanking them on their butt. Don't be sexy and feeling them up and rubbing them up,
grabbing his side and stuff like that. Oh, you look like you lose.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that.
I'm very uncomfortable. I feel very because I can do it now. Oh yeah. I
am still all for
Betty.
I am still all for calling out inappropriate behavior. All I am saying is let's not blur the lines between like setting boundaries and being inappropriate and making me feel uncomfortable as opposed to you are being immoral and you're a pig and and almost like a criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, I know,
and it turns into like assault.
I know people love about Joe Biden, right? But he always struck me as kind of creepy too.
Well,
I ain't gonna lie to you.
Maybe there's some people who don't think he's creepy.
That's fine. I said struck me.
Well, Joe would just make sure Joe don't touch him.
So that forehead on the thing.
But yes, it's important. Yes, it's important that we have the boundaries.
Listen,
we have to have boundaries.
We have a guest, so we have to go.
Don't kiss me with your lips on my cheek.
No, but that is not even in the bracket.
Now
of the
you have somebody from Europe who's
going
to come and kiss you on.
This is my cheek. Do this, but don't put your lips on my actual face.
Oh, Charles. Yes.
Be European. Okay, that's the main thing. Below Europe. We have to go. Listen to me. And I'm going to make sure I get out of here and see if I can maintain this 6 foot. You're going to need to push back. Push back, because if I got to go at the door, I got to keep 6 foot. We'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith, who stepped out of the room, no doubt to make sure that no one's touching her in an inappropriate way. But I have with us this afternoon, it's a very serious topic, Mrs. Carol Lashley, who is the principal, I think I can say that, of ADR Bahamas, and of course an attorney at law. And ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, is about, we've had you on before, about mediation, about, what do you call it, arbitration.
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution at its core. Is that correct? And the thing is, Tony, I think we always think of I think you've been on once or twice, I'm not sure. But when we think of conflict resolution, it's always sort of more or less in the adult context, I think a lot so, more so than in the children, things like divorce, things like contract disputes, that type of thing.
Right.
We don't think about it from the perspective of kids dealing with conflict. And I'm actually a little surprised. I was actually very surprised when you told me that you were doing this thing yesterday. You did a what is that, like a Skype?
We did a Facebook Live conversation, a roundtable conversation about youth violence.
Right. And I was surprised because I'm thinking ADR. What is that? I don't even know if they could pay the bill on the ADR. But that's what I was thinking, right? It's not a thing. But the reality is that's a major portion, a part of the deal, right? Tell me how your, organization, your thing is involved with that process.
Well, we're talking about conflict resolution. And if you know about conflict resolution as a child, by the time you get an adult, you know how to resolve conflict. Because you already know that conflict begins with you. Every action you take, if you pause, you'll say, should I do A or should I do B? A will be the thing that gets me on a smooth path, and B gets me into some troubled waters. So conflict starts with us. You got a good wolf inside and a bad wolf. And I tell kids, the good wolf, kindness, generosity, smiles, happiness. The bad wolf is evil, malice, fighting.
Yeah.
And so you decide which wolf is going to win, and it's the one you feed. You feed that malice all the time, you end up in conflict all the time. You feed the good wolf, you have no problems.
Well, let me ask you, how do you take? I mean, because from your experience, when does this start to manifest in children?
Well, once children are with other children, you see it in their conduct. So when they're in primary school or in kindergarten or whatever, they are interacting with other children, fighting for toys, fighting for for books, fighting for whatever. And so you address it then. Is this your toy? No. Is this your book? No. But I would like it.
Yeah.
Would you like to share it? No.
No.
Why not? And so you need at that stage to teach them about their response to conflict. How do you resolve it without a fight? How do you resolve it so that you and that person you're fighting with today can be friends tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you start. And if you don't address it when they're 2 and 3 and 4, it's harder to address it when they're 5, 6, and 7. And as it goes on, it gets harder and harder.
The teachers need to know these tools as well because, I'm doing things at home with my child, but if they're going to school and it's not being addressed, the teacher's not, taking control of that, it's almost unlearning what I've taught at home. We're not reinforcing it, right?
But at least you're teaching it at home. When your child comes home that evening and says to you, well, I had an issue at school with a child who was feeding the bad wolf, and you don't address it with the teacher to the next day because you're in a hurry when you drop the kid to school. You don't have time to talk to the teacher. You don't have time to see about things that are really important in your family life. Then it goes downhill.
So I find this extremely interesting, and I'll tell you why. We always sit here at this show, and no matter what it is, you're always trying to find the underlying cause of a lot of our social ills, right? And it's interesting because I don't know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just simply not aware, if this is a focus at the very young age in schools. So, yeah, I mean, informally, we're dealing with it, right? Like when something happens, like, don't you? But when you think about it, when you look at all the issues we have today with knife play and fighting and all this stuff, if at that very young age that was one of the core subjects, like reading and writing and whatever else they do, coloring, we may be avoiding a lot of these problems.
Well, we probably would, not only at school, but even at home in our neighborhood. Because we used to say when we were growing up, it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. And so when I was coming from school, on my way from the bus stop to home, I didn't want any of the adults to see me misbehaving because it got to my parents or it got back to the teachers. And neither of them were going to be satisfied without chastising me another time for something that they heard I had done wrong. But that doesn't happen today.
No.
So have you, I mean, again, and it'll be interesting when we get someone like Jeff Lloyd or someone, or the director of education. Have you seen any indication that this type of curricula, I don't know what to call it, program, would be introduced in schools at a very young age? And by the way, is there even such thing as a formal conflict resolution program at that age, as opposed to just the case by case?
Yes, because there's in some communities, some inner city communities in the U.S. definitely, there are programs which deal with conflict resolution at each stage: primary school, junior high, and high school. And so programs exist. They exist simple conflict resolution, and they exist conflict resolution and restoration if you damage something that I have or cause a problem. There's a consequence. And so it takes it to the next level. So there are definitely programs. They even have some programs in schools where your peers determine the consequence or the
the sanction
or the remediation that there will be.
So now, obviously, you deal with. I mean, first of all, have you been dealing with children and conflict? You're obviously you're dealing more with the divorce and the family disputes, but
right. Professionally, I deal with adults. I've gone into schools, however, and given talks to children on conflict resolution, particularly in terms of the good wolf and the bad wolf scenario, and also in terms of bullying, because that happens in schools. It happens with adults as well, bullying in the workplace. But I've dealt with bullying in schools.
Well, that's another level altogether, right?
It's a different topic.
Yeah. I mean, where are they coming from?
The bullies?
Yeah.
The bullies are coming from a different place. I think we treat bullies as mean people, and a lot of times bullies are bullies because they are insecure, or they're not as smart as the other kids, or they don't have what you have, and they're acting out. Or you have two parents in the home and they only have one. Or you have a school bag and they don't. There's so many reasons that a bully is a bully that makes that person not a mean person, but a person crying out for help, that we need to look at.
So that's not a conflict resolution, that's a psychological assistance.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes a bully is just a bully, but very often a bully is crying out for help.
But those are the individuals who, look at the young man who was killed the other day. It was a situation where his parents said that he was constantly bullied by other students. And so one of the things you said is, a lot of times they're dealing with insecurity. So how does that other student then fare? What do you do in those instances, or what does the school do in those instances when it's an insecurity issue?
Well, the school, what does the parents do? What does the school do? What does the community do? It has to be a group effort. It can't be my effort only for it to work. The other thing is that we have to teach our children that people may not like us. They don't have to like us.
Right.
We have to teach our children that that the other children might say, well, you're different from me, so I don't like you. And that's okay. We have to deal with that. We cannot expect that because we exist, that people will like us. That's a fact.
So just to follow up on Rogan's question, so I've seen this kind of scenario happen where some kid is taught some mechanism to deal with problems, right? But the other person, they ain't checking for that.
Right.
What kind of wolf you says? That's another kind of. Okay. So how does one who is coming? Listen. I'd like to talk to you. I'm not going to allow my bad wolf to cause a conflict between you and I. And I'd like if you would just step back and pause. And before he know it, he got his punch in the face.
So that's one. And tomorrow we need to address that, and he needs to then be in a group or in a situation where he understands these are the consequences for this type of action. If you don't pause and do something differently, you are going to adversely affect your possibility of doing something for yourself that's good. You will not get into high school. You will not get into college. You will not get a good job.
Does that mean
You
something
will not-
to everyone,
Yeah, I
though?
was gonna ask.
It doesn't, but you have to find what it is that
Something's gonna yeah.
something will trigger. So you have to take the time. These things take time. You can't go to a person and say, "Today I have 5 minutes for you." It doesn't happen in 5 minutes. Just like I say to the groups when I talk with them, I said, when you're dealing with conflict, you also have to know how to apologize to people. You have to know how to look in their eye and say, "I really want to say something to you. Do you have the time?" That's how you start. You find out if they have the time to listen for the conversation to take place. If they don't, then you come back tomorrow. Because you can't say, "Oh, well, I'm sorry about this," and da-da-da-da, and they didn't hear it and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And you're also not sincere. You need to be sincere, have the time to have the discussion, make sure they understand, and make yourself available to continue the conversation another time because you didn't finish or because it didn't resound with them.
It's interesting, this apology thing, because, I deal with a lot of conflict. And I've found that to be a very successful, I don't want to use the word tool, but mechanism, I suppose, because even when you may be right, your recognition of, and this is where I think it's challenging because not everyone may be equipped to deal with this, right? But when you recognize, okay, Toni Lashley's got some issues, and no matter what I try to do, she's not hearing me, right? So you say, listen, I'm really sorry if I offended you in any way, even though you know you didn't. That helps to dispel and kind of soften the scenario, right?
Right, but what doesn't soften is if I offended you. That's a little.
Okay. See.
I'm really sorry for the part I played.
Right. That's taking
So
ownership.
verbiage is
So
very
you
important.
take on some responsibility
Okay.
immediately. I'm sorry for the part I played. And even though you didn't play any part, you take that on.
Yeah.
And you at least give them the feeling that you're sincerely wanting to
Yeah.
make the thing work.
I can tell you, Rogan Smith, every single time that I've seen conflict, and I see it with different people, for instance, just something simple like seeing, and I told you about this, a woman driving in a car with the baby in the front seat with her.
Oh yeah, it's my
Okay?
pet peeve.
And if you go up to that person and say, "What's wrong with you?" Well, now we're in a conflict zone.
Yeah, because the approach is so wrong.
As opposed to, I would go up to these women at the stop sign and say, "How you doing? I know you really love that baby, hey." And then immediately she would
You can't disagree with
yeah.
that.
I said, well, if I would, maybe you would want to put her in the back seat so she doesn't get hurt, because I know you love that child. And it's a completely different thing.
approach.
As opposed to, what's wrong with you stupid fool, carrying that child in the front seat? Well, you're not getting any results from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Likewise, I tell people, do you blow your horn at the light? Why do that? When you get the light, are you in that much of a hurry that you have to blow that person? Or
Yes. Especially on 4 rows back, 4 cars back.
Yes, they can't.
The guy
hear you.
back of me, in front of me,
Right.
can't do nothing.
They can't do anything because they can't jump over the car. You can't move. So look how many flowers are around you. Look for something positive. What's the point? What's the point of blowing the horn and you have no good results?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look for the flowers.
When they're running late for work.
You think Tong Bully will look for the flowers?
Look
No.
for something positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something y'all don't know about Carol Lashley. She has the most positive outlook in life. Period. Why be bothered? But no. So tell me now what you intend to do, because I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how does a company like ADR play a role in this, because obviously these aren't potential clients. But is it just a part of social outreach in terms of what you're trying to do?
That's all it is, and it's my little bit of nation building. Because I think if we all did a little bit of nation building with the youth, we'll have a better place for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to live. And that's my way of looking at it, because this cannot be my full-time job because it's not paying.
Right.
So I have to do my full-time job and then spend some time on making the kids understand that we love them and we need them in our life, because without them we will have no future, but we need them to help us make a good future.
When you did the Facebook Live, what type of feedback did you get? Because kids were participating, asking questions, or what did you do? How was it structured?
Now, I'd never been on Facebook Live until yesterday for the first time. So it took me about an hour to find out how to even do what I was doing. So I'm probably not the right person to ask. The people who I was telling about it are just like me. They didn't even know how to get on. They came on and said, I didn't hear it because when I got on, they said live stream is on. They then came off because they didn't know what to do next.
Okay.
And I didn't know what to do next. So the answer to your question is I don't know.
Okay. Well, then the next one.
I understand you had to
Set
think
up right.
things on your shoes or something like that.
Right, and so they would tell me, when you do it next time, you have to do it like this so your face is, the fingers are up. And
But you know,
I get it.
did you have any exchange at all with the young? I saw there was the head boy from T.A. Thompson and the head girl from T.A. Thompson.
Right.
That was
They
a
were
school, by the way,
Where the
where the young man had
they
the
were on the
incident.
panel, right?
Yeah. Did you hear their
Oh,
contribution?
absolutely, because we all interacted. And so we were all on the same time. So the moderator asked me a question. We had 4 main segments, one on conflict, the next on violence, one on the apology, and the other on bullying. And so we all had something to say. The students had something to say as well. And then we rounded up.
What
So
did
what
you
was
garner
the-
with
yeah.
that? Well, yeah.
Yeah,
with
what was
the-
that concern? What were the kids saying from T.A. Thompson?
That, well, one of the children's view primarily was that you needed the input or the accessibility to an adult. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, you're stuck. You can't resolve something on your own unless you have a resource.
Is that a right approach? Is that
I think so. I think so. The difficulty will be if the adult who is available cannot be bothered. That's what causes the problem to escalate.
Yeah.
That you know there's a problem and you do nothing about it.
You say something like "get tough" or something like that, or, you know.
Do your best.
But
that's a
but
problem.
also there's never.
But we have to
there's,
recognize that that's a reality.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
But the reality also though is there won't be an adult always available. Are you in a position to train children? Because you say if you start young, they may be able to do it. Listen, there's not going to always be that resource, and then you're going to find yourself in a situation that you do have to find a way to resolve this.
Right. And so, again, as a part of our minute nation building, those 2 children, head boy and head girl, will be 2 children that I will ensure get to participate in conflict resolution, a full 8-hour seminar.
Yeah.
So I will make sure that the next session we do, I bring them in free.
And they could become
And
trainers.
Correct.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
They'll be able to help somebody else.
We'll be right back with barrister law. Is it barrister?
It is.
Barrister law, Carol Lashley, and and of course Rogan Smith, and of course Ken. We'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with our co-host Rogan Smith, I think she's going to a spring affair or something today.
So picnic.
There you go, some kind of picnic, a spring fling. But you got it good, boy. You know, since you made your transition.
Yeah. That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. I mean, you can imagine me coming in an outfit like that.
Come in your shorts.
Yeah. But listen, this is a very serious subject. It's something that actually really disturbs me because, you know, every day, if you're driving around at a particular time of the day, you're going to see hundreds, thousands of children coming out of school, walking. You know, in my day, and I hate even saying this because it sounds so cliche, it was a relatively safe environment. People rode their bikes to school, they walked to school. But now you're finding a whole different kind of, predicament.
Yeah.
And I want to know, Carol Lashley, would a company like yours engage with the Ministry of Education at a very serious level, or have you made representation to them at a very serious level, to find ways to deal with, I know when I was with We the People, we tried to introduce things like emotional intelligence, which has a lot to do with this pause. It was called 6 seconds. Let's talk about that for a second, this pause mechanism. How easy is that, just as that one little moment, to get kids, adults for that matter, to recognize that by just not reacting immediately, just that, they can be, their whole life can change, go in a different direction.
I think that's so important. And that's a concept that we use, that we encourage. Pause before you speak. Pause before you do anything negative. Pause before you assume something. So the pause is important. However, the pause has to also be carried home. If we encourage the pause in schools, we have to carry the pause home. And when we're learning, growing up, to learn anything, we were told you need to hear something at least 5 times before it sinks in. And so we need to tell these children these things 5 times before it sinks in. So we need to put for the children on their notice boards something like this. Conflict is inevitable. Conflict is inevitable. Violence is not. Resolve. Don't retaliate. On every classroom, they should see it. In every corridor they walk, they should see it. They should carry at home a flyer so that it's stuck on their fridge. And so they need to see certain things over and over and over again before it sticks in. And so just like conflict is inevitable, they need to see that pause before you speak negatively. Pause before you assume. Pause before you judge, because we love to judge. And judging has so many negative effects that the pause is extremely important. But we need to put it up everywhere so that it's just inundating every environment those kids are in, even adults. Their parents too.
Why do you think? And I know this is kind of a generic type of a question, and I don't know how you can answer it. But why do you think society, in general, it doesn't just mean the Bahamas, with all of the problems that we face that are very negative, have very negative consequences, that we don't seem to lean into things like this as opposed to other kind of quick fix, cliche type stuff? We don't seem to put the research. The example I use again is this. When we were doing the 6 seconds, we got a grant of a couple $100,000 from some private sector people. We then went to the Ministry of Education and said, look, we would like to introduce this on a pilot program. I'm going to say we did get some good response from the then minister, but the overall response was lukewarm at best. You had to kind of force teachers to come into the classrooms.
Right.
There were some schools that weren't, more. Why don't they, if they feel that they're in a scenario which is counterproductive, hostile, why wouldn't they seek these things out and embrace them?
Because they don't see the benefit to themselves. They only think of it as a benefit to somebody else. And who's going to pay them to teach themselves these things? Why should they take their free time to learn something that's going to benefit you? Whether we like it or not, that's the reality. Because we have offered on a half-day program on violence to some teachers, and the answer that we got, some came. I don't want to say that they didn't come. Some came. The answer that we got was, can you do it during school time? Why should you take out do it during the holiday?
I know that was going to come up.
But you see, you talk about the benefit of them, and you talk about what was it you talked about earlier about how you find that trigger, right? If they're in a hostile situation at school,
I would hope you want to figure
then that
out
is a
techniques.
benefit to me.
Yeah.
Because, one guy could walk in class one day with a knife and cut me, or there could be a fight that ends up affecting me. Or do I wish to go to class every day where there's altercations? How is it that they don't draw a line from their selfish need to this being a benefit that would satisfy that selfish need. Are you doing a poor job, Tony Lashley?
Probably yes. Probably yes. Because we have to see, and I obviously have been unable to show how it is beneficial to take your free time to learn something for somebody else's benefit. And that's
even if, but again, so so maybe
they don't see that
they don't see the benefit.
Well.
Yeah. What would you say?
No, I was going to say I was just going to disagree slightly when you said it's a selfish need. I think if you talk to teachers, they already feel so incredibly overwhelmed with what they're already dealing with, the challenges that they have to deal with every single day. And so this is just another thing on top. Even though it's beneficial, it's just another thing. It's just another thing on top of everything that they deal with.
But I in fact, I'll tell you, this is a story. Candy was just here, right? She and I worked together in another place. And there was a process we had to do and this has all of the elements that you talked about. There was a process we had to do that required that every day we would have to deliver something to another location. Mm-hmm. So one day we were doing that, and I said, you know what? Why don't you call so-and-so and see if we can just print these things remotely? There was no pause. Okay, I'm throwing that under the bus now. I throw my friend Candy under the bus. There was no pause. There was an immediate, no, I don't think that could happen. Because what it required was literally additional work of a 3-minute call or email. But the initial reaction, but as a result of making that call, that chore that we had to do every single day vanished. Mm-hmm. Is in what's the word I want to use? In defense of the teachers, are we not selling it properly to them?
You're probably right, we're not. Because they are not our primary target.
Right.
And we really need to sell it to them so that they see themselves as a primary target. Right. You're correct.
Yeah. Because I think that's what has to happen. They just have to realize, whatever short-term sacrifice they make, the gigantic benefit to them is to go to a peaceful classroom every day. Of course, if that's possible, they might just realize, but they always take the approach as well. Well, these no good children, you can't do nothing with them. So if they're taking that approach, that's another story. Yeah. So where have you? So you're saying that you've gone to the Ministry of Education. And by the way, let me ask you another question before I get to that. There's definitely and I might be wrong on this, a distinctive difference between this behavior in the public school system and the private school system, or no?
I think yes, because the private school system is less tolerant of certain what we might call deviant behavior. Also, the private school system encourages their teachers, guidance counselors, whomever, to undertake certain measures which will assist them to assist the children, because they see it as a benefit to their educational image that these benefits show up.
So what we find then is a lack, in my view, a lack of kind of creativity, in that if we're just focused on, and we'll get again tangent, every year we get this whole thing about the grades, right? The grades are D plus or C minus or whatever the deal is. There's certainly a correlation, Ms. Lashley, between a kind of, let's just say, not necessarily friendly environment, safe environment, and grades, wouldn't you think?
There is, but in defense, if I need to go back to the public school teachers, in the private schools, there'll be 1 or 2 guidance counselors, for example, that private school would have to deal with and find funding for. In the public school system, there are hundreds of guidance counselors. And so, how do we choose? Do we draw lots? How do we choose who to send for training?
Because of financial limitations.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's some considerations that give cause for pause.
But I mean, again, so going to this thing about and where I was heading in the direction, the initial question is, if we're going to make any headway on this, there has to be some sort of paradigm shift in terms of if we can focus heavily on bringing up the grades, because we have emphasis on that. We had a gentleman here last on what is it, on Thursday from R.M. Bailey, who was extremely focused on discipline, and he brought their pass rate up from 45% or 48% of the school to 65%. And he's saying now that his target is going to be 85%. So there are possibilities of improving things. It's just a matter of what is the focus.
Well, there's that. But also that was a gentleman and not a lady. And he might have felt more empowered to be strict and hold fast to the rules that he's set that a woman might. He might be feeling that he's zero tolerance. These are the rules. This is what I expect, and I will tolerate nothing less. And in those circumstances, I think men are more fearless than women, and so they probably in those types of circumstances get better results.
So do you think that the absence of one gender, because I mean our system is heavily dominated by female teachers, do you think that is having an issue as well? Because the problem, by the way, is the problem equally prevalent between the genders?
The children yesterday thought so.
Okay.
Because that
surprised you?
I was surprised. That was a question that was asked yesterday, and I was surprised that they thought so.
So if that is the case, then you think that even in that scenario, at least 50% of the 50% of the children are female, that does the female not have that capacity to guide the female, or is it you just need that strong male? It seems a little. I don't want to even sound sexist, right? Mm-hmm. To say that a female can't show a male how to do it, and a male can't show a female. I mean, is there some sort of lacking there?
There is. There is. I think there is. Mm-hmm. I think, too, whether we like it or not, we females might tend more than males to say, I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. Mm-hmm. And then that's really what it is in a lot of circumstances.
And I guess just the whole lack of throughout the society, the lack of presence of strong male figures versus the prevalence of very strong female figures.
Right.
Yeah. I just hope, Rogan Smith, that one of the things we can learn from this process is that we really need to take our resources and focus them on solution-oriented things. It seems that we're caught in a kind of a, I don't know the word to describe it, but a vicious cycle.
Right.
But we are, because at 9:30, I'm sure many of us have been on the road and seen kids who should be in school on the street.
I always do.
How often do we stop and say, come, what's your name? Why aren't you in school? What school do you go to? We don't do it. And until we go back to doing those things, to making these children believe that they are also important to us as a nation, we aren't going to make any improvement. Mm-hmm. We all have a responsibility, I think, and so we all have to stop at 9:30 or 10, because at 9:30 or 10, there are any number of children on the street.
Can anyone at any age be taught, and I know this might sound crazy, but conflict resolution, or is it a case of there are instances where people are just too far gone, they're too indoctrinated into whatever they think that they can't learn a new technique and
you can
change?
Always learn. You have to want to. You can always
So
learn.
it has to be the willingness to want to learn.
You have to want to. But you can be encouraged to want. Because some people think they can't learn. And if you ask them 5 times and they say no 5 times because they feel threatened or because they feel inferior or because they feel incapable, then you let them go. But if you hold on, then you can catch them. And we have had a situation where there was a little boy, well, not so little, but a boy who had been offered a scholarship to a private school, and he didn't want to go because it was too strict.
Oh.
He said, I'm not going. I'm going to fail. And he was smart. I said, well, that's where you're going to go because I'm not going to stay. I said, well, then you'll have to repeat the grade because you're going to stay. And he did eventually, but he fought and fought and fought. He said, they're too strict, too many rules. I hate them.
Wow.
And so...
But the
That's a
psychologist
problem.
will tell you it's weird because kids require that.
Right, and he appreciated it afterwards. But he fought, hoping that we would say, okay.
Yeah, so it was really us to be weak.
Correct.
Yeah.
He wanted to wear me down.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that more and more people take that kind of interest, Carol Lashley. I mean, the fact that, obviously you're in the mediation, conflict resolution business. But, at the end of the day, if you think about how many institutions exist in this country, business institutions, and I know this sounds utopian, and I know sometimes things seem overwhelming, right? But imagine, at the end of the day, you only need critical mass, right? So if you have a school where in critical mass it's chaotic, and I'm not saying that's the case with most schools, as opposed to a school where, at least 50% of the student population is civil and have learned this, then you will result with that by osmosis resolving the problem, right? So when you think about the average graduating class, Jerome is doing something with R.M. Bailey with his fraternity. They meet with his. I
was in here.
That's right. You weren't here. It was Jerome who was here. I'm sorry. You weren't well that day. But they go with their fraternity every Tuesday, and they talk to the young men in that school.
That's awesome.
And when you think about the combination of that and Mr. Johnson's discipline, that's what you're talking about contributing to the nation building. And if you think about every business in this country, if they just took one kid, just one, after school for a couple hours and showed them, how to deal with things, maybe that changes the lives of many children, and maybe by osmosis, many other children's lives get saved. So I want to thank you, Carol Lashley, for coming by, and also, you surprise me all the time for taking this initiative of saying, look, there's nothing in it for us necessarily other than the nation building aspect of it, which of course at the end of the day ends up being something for all of us, right?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. So thank you for coming by, especially on such short notice.
Thank you for having me. It's important.
Yeah, and by the way, she gave up something else, which was another thing that she is involved with Elizabeth Estates. I got to give her the props to come to do this because she felt it was very important to make this up. You gonna try and make it out at our meeting, Sel?
I can.
You can.
It's the other side of town.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much, Rogan.
Hey.
We'll see you.
Thursday.
Ken, Thursday.